Hey Milkweed Nation, this is Brad from Grow Milkweed Plants. Happy holidays. It's December, which means in most parts of the country it's very cold. What we're going to be doing today is showing you how to make a winter pot, a 1 gallon greenhouse or a milk jug greenhouse, whatever you want to call it, using simple half gallon and 1 gallon milk jugs. These can be water jugs, chocolate milk. They've been cleaned out, first of all. And let's go over the materials that you'll need to create the 1 gallon greenhouse. So the first item that you'll use is a sharp object for putting drainage holes in the container. This is an ice pick or an awl. Alternatively, a 1/8 drill bit or 3/32 drill bit can be used. Scissors or a sharp knife. High quality packing tape or duct tape. A potting soil, which we'll go over in more detail a little bit later, and milkweed seeds. I prefer native showy milkweed, although I'm going to be growing many different types, and this works for all milkweed seeds. In addition, it also works for many other wildflower seeds. So if you're making a wildflower garden, this is a great way to start those plants. As I said, it's December. That's a great month to begin this project because you want the season to work with you. Recently I heard on the Garden Path podcast, a comment was made that the great thing about seeds is that both you and the seed have the same goal, which is to grow. So what we're going to do is harness that seed's potential for growth by creating optimal conditions inside the 1 gallon greenhouse. Not only is it going to protect it from predators, it is also going to create a moist habitat for the seed and expose it to the temperatures of both cold and warm temperatures. And as the spring comes and the plant begins to grow, it's going to protect it from frosts that are inevitable that can cause problems for young plants. At the end of the process, in May and June, when the plants have grown in here, the entire contents is going to be dumped out and that plant's going to be transplanted. There's a few different ways to do that we can talk about. In 1 year, I cut the bottom off and placed the entire contents in a hole, removed the bottom, and left the material, including all of the plants that had germinated, inside the hole. And that creates a really dense forest of the milkweed plants, which is pretty neat. The other way to do it is to take them out the top and break up the soil and remove each plant individually, giving it a new home. And that's what I'm going to be doing in 2018 with the plants that grow out of these containers. So let's use the first item to create the drainage holes in the bottom. And on the 1 gallon, I created 20 holes of 1/8 inch diameter, and that's 4 in each quarter. So 4 on this quarter, 4 here, all the way around, and then 4 across. There's a divot in the center, and that created 20 holes. So making the holes, you just want to be very careful about how you do it. If your object is sharp, you should have no trouble just poking the hole in there. And you're going to do that probably maybe 16 times on this smaller one. A lot of drainage holes is good. These are small holes. You're not going to lose any soil or seed material out the bottom of here. If you don't have a sharp object like a ice pick, which I think I happen to have from my grandfather, you can use a drill bit, and you'll just drill until the bit goes through. There you go. You repeat that process until you have all the drainage holes done. I like to do that first while the container still has the structure. As you can see, this one's now open and it doesn't have the structure, so poking the holes can be a little bit difficult. The next step is going to be to cut the top of the container on 3 sides. What I've done here is I created a hinge where the handle is, and then the top will remain on it through the entire winter into the spring. And really at no time does the top need to be removed until the plants are coming out of this container. And so to create the hinge, what you can do is I'm going to poke a hole near the side here, and then I'm going to take the scissors and begin cutting from the hole around 3 sides of this container. You want to be very careful when you're doing this because there is some risk that this material can move on you, something like that, and so you might want to wear some protective gloves. The goal here is to start cutting on one side and then on the 3rd side and at approximately the same height so that you get a nice hinge effect, so you can open it to add the soil and the milkweed seeds. So I've cut around the container and now we have a hinge that will open up on 3 sides and close. Now the next step is to add the soil to this. I'm not going to do that in the living room. However, we'll add the soil right up to the surface of here. And then on top of that, we'll add the milkweed seeds. And I tend to sow the seeds fairly heavily with a high density. And then really I don't thin them out until I take the entire group of plants out and separate them individually. But that doesn't happen until much later in the year. And then when the soil and the seeds are in here, we're going to take a little bit of tape and we're going to tape the container closed. And this can just be done on one side, on this smaller one here. It's not necessary that you tape all 3 sides. We're not trying to create a seal. We want to allow the weather to come in and out of this container. So I like to just tape one side. On the larger container, I also made the hinge right at the handle, and I taped 2 sides. And this would be done after the soil is in here with the milkweed seeds scattered on top. And then I've taped this side, and I still have, like on this one, I still have the hinge. And so we'll put the cap on here. I do like to water it one time when this process begins. And so right before you put the cap on, you put a misting of water on the inside. That'll get the seeds and a little bit of humidity in here. But what will happen is the location for this is going to go outside on a south-facing wall, and there's going to be no roof above it, so it will receive moisture from the weather. It's going to get snow, rain, freezing temperatures, warmer temperatures. It's going to be experiencing everything that a seed would normally experience in nature. And you can see that when the weather comes down, it's going to come and it's going to work its way in here, and it's going to create this little biodome, little greenhouse effect, and this is all wonderful for the seed. At the same time, when little squirrel comes along looking for nuts, it's going to maybe sniff these seeds, but if we're lucky, this container will resist the squirrel or whatever rodents might be outside, and that will keep the seeds safe from predators who are trying to use them as a food source in the winter. Then in the springtime, when the weather warms up, it's going to be really late March in Sparks, Nevada, where I'm at. Usually begins in April. I start taking the cap off on warm days and taking a squirt bottle and squirting water inside and misting it. I do that on the warmest days, like t-shirt weather days. I will mist them every other day in the morning. If there's frost in the forecast, I will put the lid back on, and that's going to insulate the plants that are now growing inside of it. Again, this is in usually in April, might get a late season frost. That'll insulate the plants so that they still have a nice little bit of weather inside of here. And by basically April showers inside of here, whether natural or added by you, bring May flowers. And we won't actually see flowers. That's not correct as far as milkweed goes, because it probably won't flower until the next year. But May will show a lot of growth, and the entire root system will get established. And that's what's important about the milkweed, is that we get the roots going. On the top, we're going to have very small plants. And when we get 4 to 6 true leaves on the showy milkweed or common milkweed or whatever type that you're growing, once you get 4 to 6 true leaves, then you're all set to go. At that time, we're going to take the top off and we're going to dump the plants and transplant those puppies, and you'll be all set for the summer. Just know that milkweed plants, when they're very young, they do require a little bit more water than when they get mature in future seasons. As perennials, they'll come back year after year. Instead of adding to the end of this video, I'm going to go ahead and do another video. So if you subscribe to the channel, you will see these things fully loaded with dirt and seeds. And then we'll have a follow-up video at the end of the season, recapping if it was a successful season or if there were any problems that occurred. And my goal is to have about 500 milkweed plants from these 10 plus 1 gallon greenhouses. Thanks for watching. This is Brad at Grow Milkweed Plants. If it's good for the butterflies, it's good for me.